Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you another episode review from the short-lived Nightmare Room television show from the early 2000s. And this episode I'm going to be reviewing comes from its only season. It was episode 2. It was written by Naomi Jensen and directed by Anson Williams, and it is called Scareful, What You Wish For. I have a sealed DVD here of the Scareful, What You Wish For collection, and it includes the story on here. As you can see, Buddy the doll, who is the villain of the story, is on the cover here. So I haven't opened it yet because finding a sealed copy of this is kind of rare, but there are some special features on it that I want to get to, so I might get another copy that's opened to play this, because there's an exclusive interactive story on these DVDs that you can get that's Nightmare Room related. But that's beyond the point. So, Scareful, What You Wish For. I never watched this episode as a kid because I only had the VHS that had Amanda Bynes on it from Don't Forget Me. And I didn't even know this episode existed. And I watched it for the first time casually about a few months ago, or maybe even a year ago. And I fell in love with it. And I've watched it many times since then. And I included it in the Should Have Been Goosebumps series that I'm currently doing. Future episodes will be coming out, don't worry. But it was my episode 2, where I said that episode would have fit right into Goosebumps. And in a lot of ways, I think part of my admiration for this episode is because of how close it feels to something R.L. Stine would create. Now, a really fun backstory about this, and I want to shout out Spongy444 for putting this on my attention. Naomi Jensen wrote this episode exclusively for the television show. Apparently, there was some miscommunication, and she wrote this, submitted it, thinking that it was going to get into the show, when it was supposed to be, they were supposed to be writing adaptations of the books, but the producers loved it so much that they put it in the show anyway. Now, was that their intention the whole time, to include, exclusive episodes to the show? I couldn't tell you. Maybe they would have went the route of maybe taking some Haunting Hour episodes and putting it in there. Who knows what they would have done? Maybe some of R.L. Stine's novellas. I don't know. I couldn't tell you because we only got one season. But this, what Naomi Jensen was able to do here was spectacular. Now, Anson Williams directing here feels kind of, stock for the show. But there are some really cool things that he does. And I'll talk about that near the end of the video. But if you haven't seen this episode before, this, without a doubt, is one of my favorite subversions of the living dummy trope within the R.L. Stine universe, right? We've seen many episodes throughout many R.L. Stine branded things. There's Really You from Haunting Hour. Of course, there's Night of the Living Dummy from Goosebumps. Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. Mr. Teddy. The Puppet People. I mean, all of this stuff kind of runs and feels the same. But Scareful, What You Wish For does something really unique. And it's a slight subversion that I really enjoy. And I think if you watch this episode, you'll see what I'm talking about, and you might love it. So, without further ado, let's get into the plot and review without giving too much away. So, the first thing I want to mention before we get into the plot overview is that you're going to recognize a lot of people in this episode. The Sprouse twins, Dylan and Cole Sprouse, who starred in Sweet Life of Zack and Cody on Disney Channel and have gone on to grow up. And just recently, I think one of them starred in a movie, and the other one has been playing on the show Riverdale. They play the titular villain of Buddy, right? Shia LaBeouf, in his early acting career, plays the main character Dylan. And Betsy Randall, the mom from Boy Meets World, plays the mom of Dylan in the story. So this is one of those episodes that have people that became future stars of other things. And I think that's kind of cool. But the story essentially involves the main character Dylan, played by Shia LaBeouf. And he is moving out of his old room to move into his sister's room since she's moved on to college. And he has his friend over, I think his friend's name is Ryan, and they're throwing a bunch of Dylan's old toys into a box. And the two of them are talking, and Ryan's kind of discussing while they're eating snacks that he can't eat the snack that his mom made because it has strawberry jelly on it. And Dylan's like, oh, we must have got the sandwiches mixed up. And they're just like, having some small talk. And we see a box of toys on Dylan's bed that seems to be moving around. And we don't know what it is. And the two of them take the box and head up to the attic to put it away. And we see Dylan's mom, played by Betsy Randall, watching a home video of Dylan's 6th birthday party. And she's getting kind of teary-eyed and kind of reminiscing on how fast Dylan has grown up. And, as somebody who's not a parent, but as an adult, I can totally see how time flies by so quickly. And I think that her character is very touching throughout the story because of her relationship with her son. But she pauses the video when the two get upstairs with a box of toys, and she tells them to put them somewhere else in the attic where all of Dylan's clothes would be and all of his toys. And they put the box away, and as Dylan is putting the box of toys away, a toy falls, and he's like, well, how did this fall out of the box? It shouldn't have fallen out. And he feels kind of creeped out, but his friend tells him, hey, we got to get out of here. We want to go catch a movie. So they split up. And the next scene we cut to is the next day, where Dylan and his friend Ryan and this other girl, I won't say her name is, what's her name? Beth. Dylan and his friend Beth and his friend Ryan are talking about this 8th grade graduation party that's going to be thrown at Dylan's house, and Beth needs help putting up, advertisements and banners and stuff at the school, and Dylan, of course, agrees to do this. But as they're talking, Dylan gets interrupted by this kid wearing a blue shirt and blue overalls, and of course, the character is played by the Sprouse twins, and the character reveals himself to be named Buddy. And Buddy is this kid who thinks that he's Dylan's best friend forever. And Dylan's caught off guard and is like, I don't know you, kid. And Buddy's like, you know who I am. We're supposed to be best friends forever. And Dylan's like, I don't know you, bud. You need to get out of here. I'm not your best friend. And as the bell rings, the kids go into class, and Buddy's sitting there really upset and looking kind of angry, and you see him grabbing a book bag of some sort. And before we can find out whose book bag it is, it cuts to the kids going to lunch, and Dylan, Beth, and Ryan are all talking about, small talk things. And Ryan's eating his lunch, and he passes out due to an allergic reaction. And they check his food, and it has strawberry jelly on it. And they put two and two together that somebody sabotaged his lunch because his backpack was missing from earlier. And Dylan and Beth are talking in the hallway about what happened to Ryan, and Dylan looks really shaken up. And Buddy appears again. And this time he has strawberry jelly on his overalls. And Dylan kind of puts two and two together that Buddy must have been the one who did this. And Buddy's like telling him, hey, I'm your best friend forever. And he's like, you're not my best friend. Ryan's my best friend. Get out of here. And Buddy looks upset and just disappears. But like I said, once Dylan realizes that this jelly was on his overalls, he tries to chase him down, but Buddy disappears before he can do anything about it. So Dylan kind of starts to remember something, and he heads back home, and he heads up to his attic to this old box of toys. And on the top of it, he finds this doll that he had from his childhood, and the doll has strawberry jelly on its overalls, and it looks exactly like Buddy. And he starts to put two and two together that Buddy is a doll from his childhood and has come to life. And he panics and tells his mom, and tells her, like, look, this is happening, and I don't know how to explain it, but it's true. And all my friends have witnessed this thing is happening to me. And the mom is worried about him, and she says, well, you've been under a lot of stress. You're probably just imagining all of this. It's just a doll. And Dylan's like, okay, well, I got to go help Beth at school anyway. And they hug it out, and he leaves Buddy behind in his house. Well, when Dylan goes to school to help Beth, she's on a ladder, and she's hanging up a banner, like painting it. And Dylan goes away to do something when Buddy comes out of nowhere and knocks her off the ladder. And Dylan hears her scream and comes to aid her and sees Buddy there. And Buddy is like looking maniacal, like laughing. And Dylan goes to chase down Buddy and he escapes. And he follows Buddy home, goes to his room on his bed, takes the doll, and just has an emotional breakdown and says, "You're not my best friend. You were once my best friend. You're no longer my best friend. Stop doing this. You need to move on." And starts crying and slamming the doll until its head pops off. And the mom comes in and hugs him and tells him it's going to be okay. And you see this grisly sight of Buddy looking into the camera. Oh, man, that was so good. I don't know how they did that or pulled that off, but that was amazing. But the next thing you know, Dylan's at the counselor at his school. His mom has taken him there, and Dylan's pretty much confessing that everything that's happening to him has happened. And he doesn't know how he's going to be proving it, but he's going to. And the mom and the counselor don't know what to do, and Dylan's like, "Well, since you won't listen to me, I'm just going to go get a drink of water or something." And when he goes out, he gets confronted by Buddy, but this time Buddy looks disfigured, and it's completely it's hair raising the first time you see it, and he starts screaming, and the mom and the counselor go to check on him, and he tries to bring in Buddy. He's like, "Look, I got him. Here, I'm going to show you that it's real." And he just pulls out a doll, and he drops the doll on the floor, and everybody looks down, and you see this disfigured Buddy doll, and Dylan's kind of awestruck and doesn't know what to do. Well, turns out that later that day, he's sitting in his room sulking in his bed, and the 8th grade graduation party is commencing downstairs without him because, he's having a hard time with what he's been going through. And downstairs, all these parents have gathered some home videos to share with all the 8th graders who are graduating from their childhood that the parents love the most. And it ties back to the video that Dylan's mom was watching earlier. Dylan's mom chose his 6th birthday party video. And she decides to put it on, and everybody's watching the video of Dylan's 6th birthday party. Meanwhile, Dylan is convinced that he can stop Buddy. So he tries to go up to the attic and find Buddy. He's not there. But then Buddy kind of shows himself, and he's disfigured again, and he's like, "Hey, I want to play. You're my best friend." And then Dylan finally sits him down without screaming at him and without talking down to him and says, "Look, Buddy, you got to move on. I was a kid. I was best friends with you when I was a kid, but I'm growing up now. I'm in another state of my life. It's better if you just move on, right? I'll always remember you, but you can't be doing this." And Buddy looks upset, but he kind of understands and turns back into a doll. And Dylan tries to, take care of the doll by putting it back in the box and doesn't want to put any more damage to it. Meanwhile, Beth and his friend Ryan and his mom are downstairs watching this tape, and there's a big revelation that happens involving a magician that was at Dylan's birthday party on his 6th birthday when he got the Buddy doll. And there was some type of generic spell, like abracadabra or something, that the magician said while Dylan made his birthday wish, blowing out his candles. And it's implied that Dylan must have wished Buddy to be his best friend forever, or be alive or something. And the parents are mortified, especially Beth, who's been witnessing Buddy come to life, right? And the ending, after the party's wrapped up, involves Beth and Dylan's mom in horror that Buddy's actually alive. And they go to try to find Dylan, and they can't seem to find him, and we figure out what happens to him. And I'll just leave it at that. And that's essentially Scareful What You Wish For. So yeah, this story, y'all, it was an emotional roller coaster. It had a lot of deep meaning to it, a lot of subtext to peel back, and I really enjoyed it for that. In a sense, this story is a huge allegory about growing up, right? Dylan is an 8th grader who is kind of on the upper end of the kid's horror age bracket, but he still fits. But he's going through a transitional period in his life, and there's a sense that once he goes to high school, his adolescence is pretty much gone. At least his teenage years and his younger youth is gone. And there's something from his past coming back to resurface, and he has to deal with something from his past so he can move on. And that something is Buddy. Buddy was something from his childhood that he used to once really cherish, but now he kind of has to deal with it before he can move on. And in a lot of ways, Buddy kind of represents an imaginary friend trope that we see in some kids' horror stories, where the imaginary friend gets locked in the psyche of some kid and resurfaces around the time of puberty and stuff, and they have to deal with the imaginary friend then, right? Buddy's kind of a similar situation here. And I think the subversion there, using like an imaginary friend trope, or the same trope that Attack of the Mutant uses from Goosebumps, kind of separates it from all the other Living Dummy stories, when in reality, everything else about it just feels the same, kind of. But one thing about it that I think is purely magnificent and genius is the fact that Buddy is used to essentially say that, you know, you should stay young while you can, or people want to stay young forever, and Buddy is kind of like the physical embodiment of that, and the ending kind of implies that that's what ends up happening to Dylan in some ways. But yeah, I just thought this was a really great allegorical story. The acting was really superb. I think Betsy Randall, Shia LaBeouf, I mean, everyone around, the Sprouse twins too, all did a fantastic job in this story. And I love the emotions that you got out of it when you see Dylan just get progressively more unhinged as he can't control Buddy, and as Buddy starts attacking his real life friends, coming after them, trying to isolate Dylan. And when that fails, you see the desperation of Dylan trying to break through to Buddy, saying, look, I'm never going to change my friends. I'm moving on to another stage of my life. And you can see how that might upset Buddy. You know what I mean? It's all very human emotion driven, and it's a super impactful story from start to finish. The themes all hit. There's some really tense scenes. And the stuff Buddy does, man, he tries to deliberately give an allergic reaction to Ryan. I mean, he tries to push Beth off a ladder. He gets his head ripped off and still taunts Dylan, looking like just the creepiest thing I've ever seen. And essentially what he does to Dylan, man, he's one of the most threatening villains I've seen in anything R.L. Stine ever. But it's not even written by R.L. Stine, go figure. Yeah, it's just the music works, the cinematography's great. I love some visuals Anson Williams was able to do with some camera work and some camera shots, especially near that end, the end of the episode, where there's like a montage of sorts kind of playing back between one perspective to another perspective. That was genius. I thought visually it was stunning. The music slapped, the locations fit, even though it was one of the more small scale episodes. Something about it just felt captivating, right? And I have a lot to praise about it, honestly. But I do have some negatives with it, and a lot of my negatives stem down to the believability of some of it. Now, this is a story you're gonna have to suspend disbelief to really understand it, because there's two elements that just kind of take the episode down for me. The first element, the most obvious one, is when the reveal happens when they see the 6th birthday party, right? And they see that this birthday party magician said like abracadabra while Dylan was blowing out the candles and brought this doll to life. That's just ridiculous. That's almost on the same level as Eddie from Terror Tower saying Morgard's spell for the first time, not being a sorcerer and getting the spell right. It's just ridiculous. And when we're dealing with like magic tropes and stuff, I'll be honest, magic tropes I tend to scrutinize a little bit because they tend to behave like, oh, we can do whatever we want. But when that twist happens, I'm like, is that seriously how this happened? Like, just a random birthday party magician just waved a wand as Dylan was blowing out his candles and this happened this way? It's a little too far-fetched, even if you try to suspend disbelief. And I'm being honest. And I think a lot of people have the same issue with me there. But another issue I have is that I just don't think the episode, at least in terms of portraying it on screen, I don't know if it's like this in the script. I would like to read the script to see if it's more descriptive on this relationship between Buddy and Dylan. But I don't really buy that Dylan and Buddy were once best friends, right? There's hints of it. We see glimpses of the past, but we don't get any flashback to Dylan growing up playing with Buddy. We don't get Dylan with any montage of him playing with real life Buddy, right? And here's the thing. Now, what's also confusing about that? If Buddy's had the ability to come to life this whole time, right? Ever since that magician waved his magical wand, wouldn't have Dylan, growing up playing with Buddy, seen Buddy come to life? And if so, how could he possibly forget who Buddy looks like? I don't know. And maybe the direction, which I think kind of got jumbled, was that Buddy decided to manifest himself. Like I said, it's using an imaginary friend trope. So he decided to manifest himself to Dylan as a real person to kind of break through to him, to get him to, hang on to his childhood. But even then, that still doesn't make too much sense, right? How is this all happening? Wouldn't there be some connection to the past with Dylan with this Buddy doll if he was indeed a kid coming to life? How did Dylan forget? I mean, there's a lot of questions left unanswered, unfortunately. But I would say that those questions, while they're kind of important questions to have, the episode does a good job playing effective horror, and I do think it's great for what it is. But from a 0 to 5 star basis, those two main issues dealing with like the believability of just a birthday party magician waving a wand during the cake being blown out, that's just ridiculous. And then the lack of backstory behind Dylan and Buddy's relationship. I deducted like 0.5 off. The second one I think was more detrimental than the first issue I have. It was like 0.3 for that one, and then the birthday magician was like 0.2. But I gave this episode like a 4.5 out of 5. This is a really solid episode of the show. And easily, I think, one of the best Nightmare Room stories I've encountered so far. Even though the 3 that I've done so far, I've really enjoyed myself with. This is on the lesser end of that, but I enjoyed it for what it is. And I think most of you out there will. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Scareful What You Wish For. Let me know down in the comment section if you've watched this before. Do you love this or do you hate this? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.